Hi everybody, it's Amalia from Cool Cakes and Crafts with Amalia. I'm back on the Not Too Shabby channel today. And the project for this video is going to be centered around a masking technique. I'll be using Farm Friends and Farm Life Scene Builder to build an entire scene for an A2 card. I'm cutting down my Nina Solar White paper to approximately 4¼ by 5½. The first thing that you need to do is figure out the placement of each of your stamps. So I'm grabbing each of the stamps that I'm going to use for this particular scene, and I'm sort of auditioning them in the different parts of the card. One thing I can tell you is that the first things you need to stamp are the things that are going to be in the foreground, that's in the very front of your scene, and then from there you'll position the stamps that need to go in the middle ground, that's in the middle or behind the front, and then the final is the parts that are going to be in the background. First got the box of the month. I knew I was going to do this technique, so I took out all the stamps and I stamped them onto some masking paper. Then I fussy cut them all out and I put them in some little baggies behind the stamp set, so I have them ready to do this project. Unfortunately, and you're going to see right here, I stamped the images on the wrong side of the masking paper. So they're not going to work like masking paper. But I'm going to make it work, and I just grabbed some double-sided tape and stick some double-sided tape on the back. I'm at the point here where I've kind of figured out where I want everybody placed, and I'm pointing at the pig because I know he's the center of the foreground of the scene. So that's who I've got to stamp first, but I know that he's going to have some friends next to him, so I'm bringing out his friends, I'm putting them in place, and I'm making sure also to leave space between each of them, like they're not going to be too close to one another. And that's going to be important because when we place the second row of animals, we want to be able to see portions of their lower body. So we're going to fit some of them in between where you can see space on the front row. I have my first images set exactly as I want them, so I'm just going to ink them up and stamp them on my paper with my stamping tool. Polymer stamps are very sticky, so I'm making sure I have my magnets in place so that when I stamp my image, it doesn't pull up the paper. Now that I've stamped the first row, I need to place masks on the first row images to cover them so that when I stamp the next row, you won't have a stamped over image. It's going to protect it from the next row of stamped images. And I'm actually doing some auditioning. I'm taking the masked images and I'm just placing them in different areas just to see what it looks like, to make sure, you know, I've got everything in the right place before I actually stamp out the images. So I've got my masks on the front row. Now I'm placing my stamps where I decided I wanted them to go. And since I want this next row to be a little bit closer together than the previous row, I can only stamp one image at a time. You can see that I've masked off my horse and I've placed the cow into position. I'm adding a goat into position as well as a little sheep. Because we've used masks, all of these new images are going to be placed behind the original images. I've inked up and stamped the images. Now it's time to remove the masks, and you're going to see the magic of masking. I decided I needed another animal between the cow and the sheep, so I masked up my cow, my sheep, and that little chick, and I stamped a little donkey there right between them. Next, I want to place my tree in the scene, and so I'm going to mask my little sheep, and I'm just going to use the mask that I had for the tree to say, okay, this is where I want the tree to go. And since it's going to go a little bit off the page, I need to move it over a little bit so it'll stamp correctly and not have to go over the edge of the stamp tool. Also wanted to mention, in case you were wondering, the blue masking paper is from Inkadinkadoo, which is no longer in business, and the white masking paper is something I found on Facebook. If I remember, I will link it in the description. I decided to go with the barn instead of the windmill, so I've got my two images masked so they don't get stamped on. Sometimes when you're stamping over masks, the image skips a little. You need to make sure that you press firmly, and this is what happened here. So I'm just using a Sharpie marker to go over some of the missing lines, and you won't see it when it's done. Now I got some ink where I didn't want it on my panel, so I'm just taking my Mono Multi sand eraser, also known as the gift from the crafting gods, to erase that ink. So that's how you use masking to create a scene on your card. Here's what the final card looks like. If you want to see how I colored the tree and the sky on this card, head on over to my channel where I'll post a video with a clip on how I colored the tree and the sky. Folks, you can find the two stamp sets that I used in the Not Too Shabby box of the month. The box contains two 6x6 paper pads. This is Farm Life, and this one is Farm Sweet Farm. There are two paper pads, 6x6, 24 pages, 4 of each design. Then you get 2 packs of ephemera. Each one matches each of the paper pads. And you'll get 3 stamp sets. This one is Farm Friends, and I used almost all of the animals from this particular one, as well as the sentiment which says happy birthday from the herd. The second stamp set is called Farm Life Scene Builder, and I took the barn as well as the tree from that one. And the third stamp set is called Happiness is Homemade. These are 3 great stamp sets that you can do some beautiful scene building with. I hope you enjoyed this video. I appreciate you. Please click thumbs up and leave a comment below. Bye!